The Immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my Star Wars video game collection. I've mentioned this before, I'm a huge Star Wars fan and I enjoy playing many of the video games they have created in the universe. So in this video I'm going to be sharing every Star Wars game that I have, so sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the video. Alright, here is my entire Star Wars game collection. Everything from Atari to Xbox. I don't have everything. This is just everything that I've collected over the years. Here we go. As you know, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. With May 4th coming up, I thought, why not? So here are the Atari Star Wars games, Star Wars arcade game, one of my favorites, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and Star Wars Jedi Arena, not my favorite Atari game. So those are the 4 games for the 2600. Here's the Intellivision Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. I like the 2600 one better. And the ColecoVision Star Wars arcade game with the homebrew available at Atari Age, Battle of Hoth. That small game there, that's a Atari 8-bit pre-production cart for Star Wars arcade. Really excited and lucky to have that in my collection. Really cool. Pre-production games are pretty hard to get. Then there is the Vectrex Vec-Mania, which has Starfire Spirits, which is kind of an homage to Star Wars Arcade. It's not official, but I thought I'd include it. I also did a review of Star Wars for the Jaguar, and it is a mix of the Star Wars Arcade game, the Atari ST with some added sound, the Super Nintendo games, the trilogy, the Super Star Wars trilogy. It is a decent one, side-scrolling. I love it, done by Factor 5. And then the classic Nintendo releases, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. You know, actually, I like the Super Nintendo ones better. Empire Strikes Back, one of my favorite movies, and just not a great game. The Famicom version of Star Wars, very different. And here's some Atari 7800 hacks, which are unofficial. I just thought I'd include them in here because they're Star Wars themed. And so, very cool. I had those hacks done a long time ago. The Nintendo 64 Star Wars games, Shadows of the Empire is kind of a fan favorite. The very difficult platformer, but it is still pretty fun, even though its graphics are a little bit dated now. My favorite game on the Nintendo 64, Star Wars related, is Star Wars Rogue Squadron. And I was really into that game, especially the Y-Wing missions. And I'm showing you some box variations, the Player's Choice Million Seller version. And then Star Wars Episode 1 Battle for Naboo, not a bad Star Wars game. Then the Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, not shown in this game footage, is my Racer N64 system, which came bundled with Racer. Game Gear had a pair of Star Wars games. The Star Wars game, which is very similar to the Nintendo Entertainment System one, and Super Return of the Jedi. I'm missing a lot of the DS and 3DS games, and here are my Game Boy Advance games. I'm missing the Lego Star Wars games, and many of my games for the Game Boy Advance are just cart only. That's okay. I enjoy collecting for the Game Boy Advance. Often you can find loose carts very cheap, and that's what I do when I go to conventions, or when I went to conventions. I was able to get many of these for fairly inexpensive prices. And so there's Yoda Stories, Star Wars Obi-Wan, and Star Wars Racer for Game Boy Color. And the only box one I have for Game Boy is the original Star Wars. I am missing Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. Not a good game, but I would like to get it because it's my favorite movie. So I really enjoy collecting for all different consoles, as I want to show that in this video today. Here are my GameCube Star Wars games. That Star Wars Bounty Hunter, I think, was an exclusive, and a release premiere exclusive on some stores. Star Wars Clone Wars, Jedi Outcast, and my all-time favorite Star Wars game for the GameCube, Star Wars Rogue Leader. There is a version of Rogue Leader on Rebel Strike. You can play with 2 players, which is really cool. Even though Rebel Strike is not the best game, it's cool that that's included on that GameCube game. Lego Star Wars was included on every console nearly, and here it is. And I have some player choice versions of Star Wars games. I don't have them all, but here are a pair of Player's Choice. It's kind of the greatest hits for GameCube, if you didn't know. Here is my 3DO game, Rebel Assault. Not the best game, but it did debut on several platforms. There's the Sega CD pair, Star Wars Rebel Assault, and the Star Wars chess game, which is pretty interesting, well animated, and fairly violent. Star Wars Arcade for the 32X, wipe out enemy fighters. That's the famous line from Star Wars Arcade for the 32X. And then there's 3 Dreamcast games, my favorite being Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. A pair on the Wii U, Lego Star Wars Force Awakens and Angry Birds Star Wars. I just have a few of the Wii titles. I found many of the games on the Wii, Star Wars related, were better on other consoles, so I need to pick them up. Now here is the R-Zone XPG with a pack-in Jedi Adventure. Probably the worst console in my entire library. It's Star Wars related, and I have to show it here. There also was some other Star Wars games made for the R-Zone, and the pair are right here. I've had those in my collection a long time. There's also many different Star Wars handhelds. You know, they're kind of like, you know, the cheap Tiger handhelds, but there's Episode 1 Racer. Then there's the awesome Star Wars Pinball. And I want to now show the many awesome Xbox games that were released. There are 13 Star Wars games for the original Xbox, some of them being my favorite. Republic Commando is really good. But, you know, other people have recommended me to go back and play Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. What do you think? One of my favorites of all time is Knights of the Old Republic. And even though the Xbox version is buggy, I still enjoy playing it. But yeah, there's a lot of Star Wars games for the original Xbox. And at the very end, that's a demo with some Star Wars games on it. It was not for resale, so I thought I'd include that. Kind of uncommon to find that. I was working at a GameStop when that came out. There's also many other Star Wars games. Here are some of the other ones. The Star Wars Connect, had to include that, and Force Awakens 2 for the Xbox 360. I also want to share with you the variations. There are several Platinum Hits variations for the Xbox games. I wanted to include those there. Some of the better Star Wars games did get the Platinum Hits treatment, and there's a case variation, has the same manual as the original release, but the discs also say Platinum Hits on them. I just have a few of the PS3 versions, Star Wars Complete Saga, amazing game, and Star Wars Force Awakens. There's also a deluxe packaging of Force Awakens in a steelbook, which is harder to find these days. Star Wars Battlefront for PS4, got the VR mission, which is kind of fun to share if people have never experienced it, pretty cool. As well as 3 Xbox One games, Battlefront 1 and 2, and the good Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Even though it has some bug glitches in the game, I still enjoyed it and beat it. And so it's kind of interesting to see that there were so many Xbox releases, and then when it came to Xbox One, there's only 3. I know, I want more Star Wars games. So going up here, I definitely can't miss out on the amazing PC offerings of Star Wars. Here's TIE Fighter, one of my favorite games of all time in the Star Wars universe. I don't have a physical copy of X-Wing if you're looking for it. Definitely playing that on Good Old Games, but I need to track that one down again. Star Wars Rebel Assault, I just have a few of the big box PC games, though I have many of the other ones on disc. And so I don't have all the PC releases, but I have several of the ones that I remember growing up and playing. Dark Forces, Star Wars Rebellion, you know, X-Wing Alliance being another favorite. So many great PC games exclusive to PC, and many of these games can be played on Steam, Good Old Games, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter Collector's Edition. And so there are many people out there that grew up playing Star Wars games on their PC, some of the best games made. What are your favorite? Definitely want you to comment on what are your favorite Star Wars games. There's so many. And so I really tried to go out and got many of these at yard sales, especially, you know, when people are going digital, they're getting rid of some of their physical copies. So that's kind of a good way. If you collect PC games, this is definitely an inexpensive platform sometimes to pick up large lots of PCs because a lot of people don't want to deal with them, as well as many game stores don't even take PC games in anymore. So that's a nice way of scoring some Star Wars games for the PC. There are many other Star Wars games on PC. I just have a few. The Phantom Menace, here's Rogue Squadron, Star Wars Rebel Assault 2, and Racer, one of the last PC games that I really enjoyed on my old computer before I kind of converted to being more of a console player. There were several Star Wars PlayStation 1 games, some good, some bad. Here are some of the ones that weren't as good as others. I wasn't a big fan of the Star Wars Phantom Menace, and even Dark Forces on the PlayStation is fairly disappointing, especially if you played the PC version. Though Jedi Power Battles is pretty good. Of the PlayStation games, that's one of my favorite. And so, yeah, there was many offerings on PlayStation consoles, and I think it was a mixed bag, because I think definitely PC gamers got some of the better Star Wars games, especially in the 90s. And so the PlayStation Portable had, get this, 8 games released on it, some of them exclusive, and some of them just are a little bit different than their console counterparts. And so definitely worth checking out and fairly inexpensive to collect for. And so 3 Battlefronts for the PSP, pretty cool. Here are the PS2 offerings. I don't have them all, but several of them I do. Many are the greatest hits variations. Those are the cheaper ones. And then Super Bombad Racing, terrible, and Star Wars Racer Revenge. That's it. That is my Star Wars game collection. What is your favorite? Definitely want to hear back from you. And as always, thank you for watching this video. So there you have it. I have my favorites of Star Wars games. What are yours? I want to celebrate Star Wars. I'm a huge fan, and thank you so much for watching this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. This is the Immortal John Hancock. Thank you for watching, and you be safe.